All right, today we're talking with Charles Rose, who's an executive coach. Charles, you got a wide, diverse background, a lot of success involved. Let's before we get to talk about business and entrepreneurship, take us back and tell us a little bit about your background, where you're coming from.
Well, I appreciate it, Joe. Thanks for having me on. So I was originally from North Carolina, and when I was 6 years old, my dad got elected to the U.S. Congress, and so we moved to Northern Virginia. That's where I grew up. And one of the things my dad was interested in was technology. So over time, he grew into becoming chairman of the House Administration Committee, which oversees all the tech on the Hill, the office equipment. So companies would come up and give him samples of computers. This was in like the early 80s. He'd bring it home for me to figure out and play with. So I had a real early introduction to tech. And in fact, one day he said, Steve Jobs is coming to the Hill to promote Apple hardware. Would you like to talk to him? And my head explodes because I had an Apple II Plus in the basement. And I'm
Oh,
like, oh my God. So I got 10 minutes on the phone with him. Talking to him changed my life. It was
sure.
like I have never heard somebody more passionate or knowledgeable about their topic than this guy. And it was like I already was fired up about tech, and this just propelled me further into it. So I started my career as a programmer. So I did commercial software, I did by the hour programming. I eventually started a consultancy. And then it's like, okay, I'm a little bored with programming. I want to start a business. And so I did that with a couple of different people with, moderate success, but nothing crazy. And then one day I was asking a guy to do some work, programming work for me, which he did. And then I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm selling a piece of software out of my college dorm room and I'm taking checks, but I'm only making 1,000 a month. And I'm like, well, a check is a lot of friction, man. Like, but nobody had a merchant account. This was 1997. That was the year PayPal started.
Mm.
But I had a merchant account because I was selling newsletters to programmers. So I said, oh my God, man, why don't we take my credit card merchant account and your software and let's see what we can do? He's like, sure.
When you say merchant account, I just wanted to clarify. You mean it used to be really hard to like get the ability to accept credit card payments.
It really was.
That's what's known as a merchant account.
Thank you. Exactly.
You could accept credit card payments, and were you still doing the
I
slide?
wasn't doing the
That was gone by the
the
night.
old manual thing. But
Okay,
fortunately, but it was dial-up. It was dial-up modem networking, a la,
and it was probably
1997.
really expensive to get a merchant account,
It
right?
was. It was.
So, like this kid, if he's starting out accepting checks, you would piggyback off somebody else that had a merchant account that was willing to
That's
let
it.
you use it to
It
get you.
was a huge barrier to entry.
Yeah. Okay.
So we did 6,000 in sales instead of 1,000 by eliminating that friction point. And we were like, oh my God, this is our business opportunity. This is a huge opportunity in the
Hmm.
market. He was at Kansas State University freshman. He quit immediately. And we started this business together.
No kid.
And he moved to Seattle and we partnered with a guy who'd worked at Microsoft. He was product manager for Internet Explorer. He left to start a website called winfiles.com, which aggregated all the shareware of the day.
Uh-huh.
And we partnered with him. So any piece of software that had a register now button, he'd make a percentage on. He'd get a commission. And so that was all the marketing. We just needed one good JV deal. I cold called some of our top clients, and then we were good. 3 years later, we sold for 10 million. And that was amazing. But then also that I had gotten to a place where it was like, this is what I need to do to make my dad happy. And he was very happy. He was very proud. But it wasn't deeply satisfying for me. It was like, huh, now what do I do with my life? It's like, okay, I've accomplished that. And, everything sounds great. It was 10 million on paper. The market crashed, a year later. And so I wasn't able to take out as much as originally hoped.
Hmm.
Nevertheless, that's what got me to coaching. And working with a coach in San Francisco, it started to shift some major pieces for me and seeing, okay, well, how do I be more honoring of who I am? How do I figure out that piece and how to be in the world?
Hmm.
And and if I could support other people in having this light bulb moment go on for them, that's what I want to do. Because I realized being of service was a lot more fulfilling to me than what I'd been doing previous.
Yeah. Now, building up to right before we sold your company, had you ever thought once beyond what you would do or what you would spend your time doing
No,
after you
not
sold your
once.
company?
I mean, we all have this thing. It's sort of, it's like you see the movies in slow motion where we're coming out of a jet and we have sunglasses on and it's like, but life isn't like that. So
Yeah.
it's like I hadn't really thought a whole beyond it. I mean, I'd been driving the same Volkswagen for 13 years, so I wanted a new car. That was one thing. But everything kind of had this Christmas morning effect because it's like it was exciting at the time, but a month later it's like, okay, well now what?
Yeah. Did you like you get depressed, you start gaining weight, like
All of it. Yes.
no purpose in life,
That's it. I
now
had no more
what?
purpose. I had accomplished the thing I had set out to do.
Yeah.
Mind you, I didn't have a girlfriend. I wasn't really close with my family. I kind of alienated my friends because I'd put all of me into this company
And now it's
and
gone.
and now it's gone. And it's
Yeah.
like, God, I'm alone, fundamentally, deeply alone. And it's like, man, I haven't worked on any of these other relationships.
Yeah. Similar experience happens to veterans transition out of the military. Like they've been
Yeah.
all in on this thing and they look forward to getting out and they walk out and then they're like, either now what? I haven't thought about it, or
Yes. Yes.
oh, I've been thinking about it, but it didn't turn out to be like I thought it was going to be.
Yes.
Um, so one of my old motivational CDs I listened to many years ago, um, guy was talking about in the Apollo missions, astronauts had
Hmm.
they started having not all of them, very few of them went up and actually went to the moon, but orbiting in outer space was the goal. I've been to outer space. I'm an astronaut.
Right on.
They come back, all of them would experience extreme depression, have lots of problems, and they figured out that it was because none of them had planned what they were going to do beyond going into outer space. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
lifelong goal is to be an astronaut and go into outer space, and they do it, and they come back like, well, I've accomplished my goal, and I'm only 35 or 40.
Exactly. Exactly. I was
Now what do
35.
I do? And the way
Yeah.
they fixed it was before they ever got a chance to go into outer space, they said, what are your goals and desires after this happens? And so they
Hmm.
already had a plan they were going to execute on afterwards. And
Yep.
that pretty much fixed the problem because they just forced to kind of change their perspective. Like you still going to have life after this. So what is it you plan on doing after? And,
Definitely.
but very similar experience with building a company like you did, and it was your baby for that long, and then boom, you
Sure.
sell it, and so you got a lot of money, which is great, but
Yeah.
you're
But no
bit
more purpose.
yeah, exactly. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back talking with executive coach Charles Rose. So Charles, you did whatever entrepreneur aspires to do. You built up a company, making a lot of money. You sold out 10 mil, kind of lost your purpose, looking for what you're going to do next. How did you arrive at coaching?
So a friend recommended just because I'm searching like crazy, and a friend in San Francisco said, because I was living on the West Coast at the time, so why don't you meet my coach? Why don't you talk to her? And I thought, why not? So I did, and she started introducing me to concepts that I hadn't really heard before. It was like the idea that I was more in charge of my own life than I thought. And I hadn't taken the time to investigate things like, well, what is my purpose in my career? So she introduced me to something that I now call the clarity process, which is about getting clear about a particular relationship in your life, which might be a person or it might be abstract like your career. So I started to look at, well, what might be my purpose with my career? And we started to open that conversation. And it's like, okay, well, I've accomplished this thing over here that I wanted to do, but what else? How could I serve with, and I love how the military talks about it's all about serving. It's your service. It's your service record. It's all, and it's like as an entrepreneur, I'm serving too. So who am I serving? It has to be something that deeply resonates for me. I'm serving through a part of myself. And I'd always been interested in psychology. When I was 12, I told my dad I wanted to be a therapist, and he's like, "Stick with tech, kid." He's like, "You'll
12,
do better
really?
with tech." Yeah. So I had the opportunity to kind of come back and be like, well, I still am fascinated by how people think and how could I serve people at that level? And so she kind of modeled a business and a behavior of supporting entrepreneurs. And she kind of referred a bunch of people. I coached a guy who was he played for the 49ers. It's all mindset.
Hmm.
And so he too was looking at getting out of the NFL and like, well, what the hell else do I do with my life after this?
Right.
So,
So that was your introduction to coaching. Had you even had a coach of your own up to that point?
no, I hadn't. I hadn't. I wish I had. It would have it would have helped me
Yeah.
out quite a bit, but no, I hadn't.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people are, they either don't understand or they don't get the whole, why would I hire a life coach or a business or an individual coach? You know, something like a,
Mhm, mhm.
I get, people get that if you're on a sports team or something like that, you got to have a coach, right?
That's
But
it.
they don't understand. And I was the same way. Like, why would I want a coach? Like, just to walk me through my daily life. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Because you don't know what's on offer. You don't know what's possible until you've kind of been through it and opened yourself up to a different way of thinking. Coaching amounts to the opportunity to think different thoughts, and that can be very significant in terms of your perspective on life.
yeah, I know the first time I experienced in college, experienced several things just being exposed to that big college environment. In some of the classes and stuff is like it opened up my eyes to other worlds that I had no idea about. And then
Absolutely.
after college, the Marine Corps, just some of the leadership and life experience going on in there, just the Marine Corps was the first place I was involved in where they actually got into your brain and they made you question how you think. They made you question
Yes.
why
Yes.
are you doing this? Like you have other people you're responsible for. It was always put in the context of that. So
Yeah.
you need to be thinking about what you're doing and morals and ethics,
Yes.
responsibilities. Um,
Yes.
I and they don't hold back either. I mean, it's like all in, put
Yeah.
you on the spot kind of stuff. It's like wow.
Yeah.
Um, and many times since then, of course, but when I was younger, I just didn't have much of that.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
most people might get a little bit of it from sports,
Hmm.
might get some of it from church, but usually that's
Exactly.
more Christ and God oriented, not
Hmm.
necessarily uh, you know, life lesson or success oriented. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Um, so talk to us in the back in the beginning when you sold your company, you got interested in coaching. You kind of had the background mantra for wanting to do this, anyways.
For sure.
You got introduced to another coach. She helped you out, got you a couple of clients. Where did your coaching business go from there?
Well, it took a lot of twists and turns. Because once you get the training to be a coach, then you've got to figure out the business side. And I wasn't really prepared for that. So that was just a piece of, okay, how do I reach my people that are interested? And so I tried different forms of marketing. I did cold outreach, email, I did direct messaging on LinkedIn, and that worked for a number of years. That kind of gave me all the clients I could handle for a while. I would send direct messages to people on LinkedIn. This is who I am. This is what I want to, this is what I do. Do you want to get on a call with me? And that would get me leads, and I'd convert a certain percentage of those leads into paying clients. After COVID, that didn't work. And so I've been shifting to, because this is the thing with like online and other businesses, as our world shifts, the marketplace shifts too. So I've been working lately, more things have come from referrals. I'm putting more content out on LinkedIn. Um, so it's still searching for how do I connect with my audience. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Why did what shifted during COVID to cause that change?
I think I think people finally got a little more tired of spam. Maybe they were more present to it or something, but there's been way less tolerance of, you know, unsolicited messaging from people. And I don't know, something about that just kind of blew up 4 years ago, it seemed.
Interesting. Yeah. Um, so talk about when you first start working with a business owner, how do you lay the groundwork and what are some of the steps you go through in your process?
So one of the things we look at is sort of where does it hurt? Like where are your stresses today? And then we start looking at that, and it's like usually if you're incredibly stressed, something you're not taking care of something. You've neglected some aspect of your environment. Might be yourself, might be another relationship. But one of the things we do is we take a holistic view of like, how are you doing with your business, with yourself, with your partner or your kids or your parents or your friends? It's like life is a whole thing. And we start looking at, well, what do you want more clarity on? Most people are wanting more clarity on their work. So we start there. But then you start to see patterns. Well, my dad said something when I was 6 that I've still carried with me, and that makes me feel less confident. And I actually believe that maybe I'm not good enough, let's say. Um, and so I start to see as a coach, are those beliefs helping you? Are they serving you? And if they're not, let's look to see what we might want to shift. So we start there. We look at how to eliminate stuff you might be dragging along from the past. Like I said, like let's say you had some interaction with a parent you're still kind of traumatized by,
Hmm.
or any other trauma. It's like, how do we heal that and let that go so it's not clouding your judgment in your current business and life? Then let's focus on the present and see, what do we need to clarify? How do you want your business to go? How do you want your marriage to be? How do you want to show up as a parent? And then once we've examined all those relationships and eliminated anything that's not working, then let's look at the future. Let's vision 5 years from now, what would be your ideal day? Or what would be your ideal business or your ideal marriage or your ideal whatever? And so we've got the present and now we're looking towards the future. And then we look at anything else that comes up. Where are you feeling resistance? I'm not comfortable with that. Okay, great. Let's go into that.
What's amazing is I don't know, maybe you could shed light on this, but what percentage of people in the world or in US, whatever, never actually ask those questions. They live an entire life of what's your ideal job? What is your ideal relationship at home? What's your idea of what happiness would be? What's that look like? Most people have never even asked those questions, let alone even had a chance to pursue them or achieve them.
Completely agree. And I think that number is in the high 90s, to be honest. I think
Yeah.
most people are in survival mode. So that's one of the things in coaching is realizing, have you been in survival mode for years, just kind of going through the motions? You're surviving your life, but are you really thriving in it? Are you really creating the life that you want to have? It's like you're a pilot. We always talked about, and I said I've been a recreational pilot. They always talk about being ahead of the airplane or behind the airplane.
Yeah.
And it's like if you're just reacting to things versus being in control and anticipating things, it's a vast difference. You want to be ahead of your life in the same sort of way. You want to be
Yeah.
anticipating things and having pre-thought through a number of things.
Yeah. Great analogy, by the way. So great
Thanks.
pilot analogy. That's so true. If you're not thinking way ahead of the airplane and already have ideas on what you're going to do when certain things happen, and when they happen, you can execute on
Yeah,
what you already plan to do.
exactly.
It makes things much easier, but you get too far behind,
Totally.
and then
Totally.
bad things happen. So but the reality is that that's how most of us go through life.
Yeah,
We're not thinking very far ahead. We're doing
that's
what the
it.
boss tells us to do.
That's
Um,
it.
we're
We're
waking up
just
in the
getting through
morning.
our day or our week.
We respond to what our spouse wants or asks for, or what they're doing. Respond to what's how the kids are doing things, job wise. You know, it's
Yep.
we're constantly just responding to things, walking blind through
Yeah,
life.
man. We really are. That's it.
Yeah, and most people never get that chance. They don't ever have somebody grab them and say, "Hey, man, think about what you're doing. Like, what have you ever thought about this?" Um,
Exactly.
it can be mind altering. I know.
Oh man, life changing.
Yeah. Um, so how does somebody find out more about you if they were interested in your executive coaching?
Super easy. Just go to my website. It's charlesrose.coach, and you'll see a button on there to just book a one-on-one discovery call. It's free, and then we could chat about where you are.
Yeah. What's the coaching structure look like? Is it a Zoom call once a week?
Yeah, it's a Zoom call every other week.
Uh,
And if people want to work on things, I can provide homework. Some people do, some don't. But yeah, the cadence is usually every other week. It gives enough time for things to develop in life, and then we look at that while also looking at what are the major things, building blocks you want to work on, like career or health or something else.
uh-huh. And you've been doing executive coaching since you sold your company.
I have, and since 2000, 2001, and
Wow.
increasingly more time put towards it because I've had other projects and things I've done and at the same time. And right now it's just 100% coaching.
Wow. So, yeah, so you've been an executive coach for what's that, like 23 years?
Yeah, like 24-ish, something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
still going.
23, 24, yeah.
Huh. Um, Most people are probably a little hesitant to what the cost of a coach. Can you address that?
Well, I mean, it's sort of like what's your peace, what's your enjoyment of life worth to you? I typically get paid by corporations, by companies, but these are startup guys too,
Hmm.
and it becomes an expense of their company. It's sort of like you would pay for training, you would pay for, professional development. This is professional development at some of the deepest level possible that we can do.
Hmm.
So I can work with someone a little bit on the cost depending on where they're at, but usually it's just someone has a business and this is just a cost of the business.
And what do you have a typical life cycle with people, with customers?
Yeah, I mean, we usually get in because somebody's got something they want to work on. Something's uncomfortable enough that they're ready to do something about it. So
Hmm.
we address that first. But then we also look at if you have an issue with your company, it may be that this goes back to something in your childhood. So we look at that and how do we clean that up and shift your perspective on things. Coaching is very often about how you can open your mind and look at things differently. So there's that sort of initial discovery phase of sort of working on where it hurts the most right now. Once we're out of that phase, then we can start looking at all the other areas. Like, again, how's your marriage? How's your uh, being a parent, family, friends, your health, your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your financial health, all these different things. And then steadily we work to a place of clarity and then we look at the future. How do you want to plan what would be ideal? And then usually I have a number of clients that have gone into a maintenance mode where they just connect with me every 2 weeks and whatever's coming up in their business, whatever there's coming up in their life, that's what we work on.
Hmm.
And so they like that. I just sort of support them in staying in the center lane and support them that way twice a month.
Yeah. So what's the book I'm thinking of? It's about people's relationship with money. The guy wrote the book about like people have lots of money problems because of their relationship with money. It usually comes from something in their childhood or how they grew up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what was the name of that book. Anyways, I found it interesting. I'd never really thought of this. Like, some people that they do nothing but save, 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 and never spend money on anything. And then there's the exact opposite. They blow it all. And then there's other people that are
For
fairly
sure.
reasonable. And he goes through this process of figuring out, like, oh well, my dad was my dad did this in his career, and so once a year he would get a huge payout, and life would be great, and we'd have all this money, and then
Yes.
we'd start spending, and within 6 months we were out of money, and then we were broke for the next 6 months until the harvest again or whatever that may
Right,
have
right,
been.
right.
And like even though they're long gone from that and separated and have a normal job, they still lived a life of feast or famine, and they couldn't figure out why they were
That's
in
it.
the cycle. Um, it's pretty.
Because when we're little, those patterns become our norm, and that's the beauty of coaching is it's going back and looking at those very patterns and saying, what shaped your relationship with money? It's like, amazing supply and then scarcity. And then you have supply and like you said, boom or bust, and you go through that with life because that's what you think is the normal. It's your default. Well, in coaching, we can shift that default. We go back and look at the beliefs because ultimately what underlies that is your beliefs. But your beliefs are just thoughts that can be changed. A belief is essentially a habitual thought. So we can change those thoughts. You don't have to live with scarcity and abundance. You could just choose to say, hey, I would like to be abundant all the time.
Yeah.
And I believe that's possible.
Do you have any interesting success stories, whether specific or generalized?
I think The success stories with clients are usually a lot of people in life think that if they hit the payday, they're all good. And it's like if my life has shown me anything, it's been that wasn't the case, that it pushed me to look at things that were uncomfortable. But yet in doing so, and this is where I think your listeners have a leg up. Like you guys don't shy away from the discomfort, and that's a strength. Most people are afraid of discomfort, you know. Veterans, I don't see that as a thing. You have an inner strength that will help you with um, entrepreneurship, like that's a real leg up kind
Hmm.
of thing.
Yeah, interesting. In the military, among a lot of military people,
Yeah.
especially people that were in tactical type MOSs, they are military people are and veterans. They are not necessarily comfortable, but they've accepted the fact that they risk life and limb to
Mm,
accomplish their mission.
yes.
They risk having harm done to them for what they do for a living,
Yeah.
but they're very risk averse to financial things. They don't like
Interesting.
risking their money. And in the civilian, it's flip flopped. Most
Interesting.
in the civilian world, their civilians are used to risking their money. They're in the
Mhm.
money risk game all the time anyway.
That's
They
right.
don't live in that protected 2 week paycheck every 2 weeks you get that paycheck. You get automatic medical and dental and everything
Right,
covered.
right, right.
You get the commissary. You get the exchange. You live in this kind of protected, almost communistic environment.
Right, right, right.
And then in the civilian world, you don't have any of that.
It's true.
You're risking your money all the time. But the idea of risking life and limb for anything, not comfortable with that. So it's almost like two
That's interesting.
opposite,
Yeah,
two opposite things, but yet they're both risking something.
totally.
Um,
Totally. That's fascinating to me.
a big shift in mentality when you come out of the military. Um, well, so Charles, we're getting close to the end of our time. I do want to give you the last word. So one last plug for if we're interested in getting a hold of you and checking out executive coaching a little more. How do we do that?
For sure, Joe. Thank you for the opportunity. Best way to find me is just come to my website. It's charlesrose.coach, and you can connect with me there, please.
Okay. I do want to give you the last word. If you're talking to any any anybody coming out of the military that might be willing to get into coaching or hire a
Oh, I
coach,
would love to work with someone like that.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Or
And it's like,
somebody that just got out, somebody that just got out, maybe they're running their own business and they're stressed and they're struggling. They like, what, what do I do? How do I get help with this? What kind of advice comes to mind?
recognize that you're going through a major change. This is a massive shift of focus from military to civilian entrepreneur. So give yourself a break in realizing that you're doing an awful lot to change from one place to the next. Also realize that you have skills. You may feel like this new realm is all new and different, but you have strengths and skills and discipline that you've built over your military career, all many of which that can be used in this entrepreneur world. You may not realize the strengths you already have. And my advice would be get clear on your purpose. What's this business for you? Why are we doing this business? What do you want to get out of it? What do you expect to give to it? And that can give you a little more perspective around uh, your business. But then, like I said, I just keep going back to guys coming out of the military. You don't realize all the skills you have. You're ahead of the game in terms of some guy coming out of school and just hopping into a company. You've got you've got some deep skills that you may not appreciate yet.
Yeah. We talk about soft skills versus hard skills. Like
Yeah,
military guys and veterans in general have
yeah,
great soft skills.
yeah.
They may not have the MBA or the all the different abbreviations and letters behind their name that are considered hard skills,
Right.
but they've got all the soft skills, and that's usually where they shine.
I never got a degree. I was doing a computer science program, but they were teaching mini computers and mainframes, and it wasn't relevant to the market at the time. So I just decided to continue with working full time. But I've done all of my entrepreneurial work without a degree. So I'm here to tell you it is entirely possible.
That's awesome. There's definitely a paradigm shift with the whole got to have a college degree thing
Exactly.
these days. So it's interesting to see
Exactly.
it. Yeah. All right, Charles. Well, thanks for being here and sharing your entrepreneurial success story, and look forward to seeing your future success.
Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate you having me.
You bet. All right, we're Oscar Mike.